Aloha mai kako. We warmly welcome you back to our Pacific Dusk webinar series. It's been a while, but we are looking forward to getting that going again. I am Jennifer Stroll, and I am the meteorology instructor here at the Pacific International Training Desk in what today is wet, rainy Honolulu. The Pacific Desk is a cooperative agreement between the University of Hawaii at Manoa and the U.S. National Weather Service. And our goal is to collaborate with and to help build capacity within the weather services across the Pacific. And one way that we do that is this webinar series on topics of interest in the region. Before we begin, I do want to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded and that webinar or that recording will be posted to our YouTube channel within a few days. Our website, unfortunately, is currently down, and we hope to bring that back online soon. But for more news and updates in the meantime, you can follow us on Facebook. You can look there for updates on training cohorts, short courses, and more webinars for 2026. You can use the QR codes on the screen, but I will also put those links into the chat in a moment. Today, all of us have been muted except for our presenters. And you're invited to turn off your camera to preserve bandwidth for everyone. We will have some dedicated question time at the end. However, you're welcome to ask questions at any time during the presentations using the chat box. So please join me in welcoming our guests today. We have two presentations on emerging marine observation technology. As we all know, wave observations are quite sparse across the Pacific, and marine hazards can bring real significant impacts to our communities. In our Pacific Desk training program, we learned to interpret NWP, we learned how to make predictions of waves in our areas of responsibility, but we don't really have robust observations to either validate those models or to verify our own predictions. But that said, we have more and more observations coming online all the time. And today we will hear about two potentially low-cost and easily deployable wave observation platforms and networks with what I hope are applications from ocean recreation to early warning systems to research, and also spanning from deep water to the surf zone. So we will first hear about backyard buoys from Nicole Giles and Megan Hattori from PAC-IUS here in Hawaii, followed by a presentation on aerial wave observation technology by Dr. Teddy Allen of HENET, who is based all the way over in Barbados. So I will get our first presentation up. And then Nicole and Megan, you can take it away.
Okay. That's actually the last page.
Oh,
Sorry.
Fix that. Nope, we can fix that. Thanks for that.
Okay. Now for the great preview. So aloha, I am Nicole, and Megan and I are with PAC-IUS, which is the Pacific Islands Ocean Observing System. And today we are going to present on our Backyard Buoys program, which is meeting community needs for wave data through co-design and co-production. Next slide, please. So the why. Indigenous coastal communities live at risk from hazardous ocean conditions, which are being intensified by climate change, but are historically underserved with wave data that can help mitigate the risk. Next, please. Backyard Buoys is here to enable Indigenous and other coastal communities to collect, steward, and use wave data that complement their existing knowledge to support their safety at sea in a changing climate. You can do the next. This is our Backyard Buoys team. It's continuing to grow. We have founding Indigenous community partners from each of our three regions. Our three regions are Alaska, the Pacific Northwest, and the Pacific Islands. They have been involved from the beginning of our proposal with the National Science Foundation Convergence Accelerator Program. We also have educational partners in each region, and we are also partners with SOFAR Ocean, which is a technology partner that provides the low-cost SOFAR spotter buoys. Next slide, please. So although our three regions look nothing alike, there is more in common functionally than meets the eye. Natural features that have benefited indigenous cultures for millennia, um, from the tropical Pacific Islands, the Pacific Northwest coast, and Alaska. Next, thanks. So coral, kelp, and ice. These are the three types of wave buffers in our regions, and each protects the islands and the coastal lands from waves and storms. But each is threatened by climate change, whether through coral bleaching or marine heat waves or global warming. Reducing of these features will affect the wave energy that reaches their shores. All of these features serve similar ecosystem functions and also share the similarity of being understudied in terms of their forecasted future ability to continue breaking waves. There's a lot of studies focused on offshore reefs, kelp, and remote ice sheets. The nearshore reefs can reduce up to 97% of wave energy and are actually very understudied. So for this presentation, since we're in Hawaii, we are going to focus on the Pacific Islands. The Pacific Islands team you see on this page, the top photo is in La Push, Washington, where we had an all-hands meeting with partners and community members at the Quileute Indian Reservation in La Push. The next photo you see is our team in Majuro, the Marshall Islands, deploying the first spotter buoy in the Pacific Islands. And then our backyard buoys meeting in Honolulu. And then on the far right is the Guam Coastal Management Team deploying the first backyard buoy in Guam. So this slide illustrates the approach of the Backyard Buoys project. All of these pieces are essential for our mission to enhance safety at sea by improving access to data and supporting autonomy. So without trust, we wouldn't be able to bring this project together. Indigenous community members and their liaisons participate in the project as full and equal partners. Through co-design, that's our founding principle is co-design. We work from the very beginning with Indigenous partners to design local wave buoy programs, which puts each community in the driver's seat and the owner's seat of these buoys. So from community meetings, outreach, educational events, the community is involved in selecting the sites where the buoys go and deciding what they're going to do with the data. We try to make the data usable and accessible. We're using wave buoys that are easier to steward, that are lower cost. And at the bottom is a quote from from DUA, who's a partner in the Marshall Islands. If they don't understand it, it's not their data. So Backyard Buoys prioritizes making sure that the communities have access to the data and know how to use it. Part of that is education, which is essential for the community and for the youth to get involved. Accessible technology. We're using SOFAR ocean technology, which are much cheaper and lighter than other wave measuring moorings used by governments and academia. So they can be deployed and stewarded by communities using smaller boats or vessels. From the left to the right, you see a 3-meter diameter discus buoy, NDPC NOAA style, mid-ocean. Then a 2.1-meter diameter scoop buoy, 0.9-meter diameter data well Rave Rider buoy, the big ones. We have 2 in American Samoa in partnership with Pacayuse. And there you see a spotter buoy, which is obviously light enough to pick up and carry around with you and toss off a boat and deploy. Next is where are these buoys actually located? So Megan will be talking about where we have these buoys.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan, and I'm the engagement coordinator with Pacayuse. And I've been working with Backyard Buoys now since I started about 2.5 years ago. So this is by far one of my favorite projects that we work on and to talk about in general. So as Nicole gave a great introduction, where are all these buoys, right? So this map that you're looking at is pulled from the Backyard Buoys website, and it just gives a quick overview of, the 3 regions and where they're deployed. As far north as Utqiagvik, which is the very north tip of Alaska. As far west as Ulithi Atoll, and as far south as American Samoa. And there's more on the horizon. So you can see these are the backyard buoys, spotter buoys. Now you probably are aware of some other spotter buoys maybe in your area. Aqualink also has quite a few buoys, and those are also included in the Aqualink buoys are also included in the Backyard Buoys app, which we'll show you in a moment. But this map is just showing the Backyard Buoys one. So those spotter buoys are used for other projects as well, but these are just the ones that we have. So to get a closer look at the locations, we'll go to the next slide. You can see, oops, we have 2 buoys deployed in American Samoa as of February, Tahu Harbor and Faleasau Harbor, both on Tahu Island. There's also other sites being discussed for the Manua Islands. The Guam Coastal Zone Management Program deployed 2 buoys in July, one off Hagat and one near Malesso, but the one near Malesso just recently broke free. So it's on walkabout, and they're hoping that maybe someone can recover it, but it is kind of far. So that's one of the other benefits of having lower cost sensors is when they go missing, it's not as a big of deal, but it's still hard. But you saw on the slide before that it is a lower cost sensor than the big buoys that Pacayuse traditionally helps with. So there are 2 sites chosen in Saipan. Partners there are the Pacific Coastal Research and Planning nonprofit, as well as the Northern Marianas College and 500 Sails. And then Nicole already alluded to the Marshall Islands Conservation Society, Dua's quote. They were the first ones to deploy the one in Majuro, and now they're looking at another site in Arno. So for the next slide, I think there's a picture of the Arno map on the bottom. Yeah, bottom left is the Arno. Top left is potential sites in the Chuk Lagoon. And at the end of January, a buoy was deployed in a channel off of Pohnpei in collaboration with the Office of Fisheries and Aquaculture, Fish and Wildlife, and the Pohnpei Surf Club. There's a site in Ulithi as well. And then on the far right, you can see proposed sites in Palau. Now, how do you get to access all of the data that these buoys provide is the next slide. You can see our Backyard Buoys app. And on the app, I know there's 3 images there. It is iteratively designed with the community partners. So we got like people said what they wanted, and then we tried to create it, and then we went to them and they came back and they said, no, that doesn't look right. It was back and forth. And it took years, but it's been released. It is publicly available. It also has multiple language capabilities. Right now, Samoan is shown in the middle. And then we're working on Marshallese and Pohnpeian next. One of the most important things was that the permission was given from all these stewards and partners to share this data publicly. And as I mentioned, Aqualink also jumped in and said, yeah, you can access our API, and their buoys are also available on the app. So when you look closely, the left one is the picture of the iPhone or the smartphone app. And you can see there's a map on the top, and then it's just very clear. It's got time, date, wave height, wave direction, and period. Key information, just really quickly accessible. Barometric pressure, and then water temperature too. And then as you can do different views. So you can see a time series on the right. This is for the Majuro buoy, but it was from February 22nd to the 29th. And you can see you can get multiple days, and you can look at what has been happening. You can set your own thresholds. So if there is a threshold you would like to be alerted about, it can do that. There's also messaging capabilities so that you can message with other folks using the app. So that is available for Apple and Android devices. All right, next slide. We're going to talk a little bit about how important communication and knowledge sharing was to everything that we have done and are currently doing. So in the upper left, you can see it was a co-production workshop in Utqiagvik, Alaska with partners in 2022. So a lot has happened in the last couple of years, but the planning started August 2022, early in the project, the community members from all 3 regions shared their ideas about what full autonomy looks like and what would help them, what it would be to help them achieve this. So we meet regularly, and one of the things we have is working group calls. So there's a group that focuses on moorings and buoy maintenance. There's a group that focuses on education. There's a group that focuses on data and dissemination, creating the app. They have an ERDApp now. So there's all these great groups that are a part of the larger group that come together on their own. And all of these working groups were determined in a co-production fashion, and everyone decided what was going to be helpful for them. It wasn't like we assigned people to certain groups. And so many of us are in many of the different groups, and we all get together and chat about different things, from mooring design to how to make the app more user-friendly. So it's all very collaborative and cohesive. Then we also get together for all hands, which all the working groups and everyone involved comes together. So that first one was in Utqiagvik. There was also one in Honolulu with partners in February 2024. And then we just recently had one this past year in February 2025 in the Pacific Northwest. Now, the next slide for knowledge sharing is, where do you find all of this great information? So knowledge sharing with everyone, including the public, we have established through the Backyard Buoys website, which is designed and maintained by someone in-house at PAC-IUS. He does a great job. And you can find there the links to download the app on your phone, or you can there's ways to use the SOFAR and the Aqualink websites as well to look at some of these things if you're interested in that way. We find the app is the best. The webpage has tons of information and resources and materials for others, anyone who's looking to deploy these buoys or develop a community stewardship plan. So, folks reach out to us. The word has been spreading, and people are really interested in doing more. Another place, so the Facebook page, obviously we have fun things like updates and whatnot. It's a way to keep people informed and connected. But the last one on the far right is the PAC-IUS Voyager. And I don't know how many of you have been on PAC-IUS Voyager, but it is an amazing tool to look at the data visualized on your map, and you can pull it up pretty quickly. And you can pull up the wave data from the backyard buoys, as well as the data well, the larger buoys that might be in your region to help with forecasting as well. You can pull them up in the same map. We're working on making that accessible in the app as well, but right now it is currently available on Voyager if you wanted to see backyard buoys and other wave data simultaneously. So the next slide, Nicole alluded to education, which has been huge for us. And especially Nicole and I work really hard on this, and we love it. It was said at the very beginning from an Alaska partner that in order for this project to live on and survive and be sustainable, they said, we need less gray hairs in the room. So the idea is to spread as far as wide throughout the entire, all 3 regions to the younger folks, so they can tell their parents, their teachers, tell everybody about it. And obviously we're trying to go through different routes, so elementary, middle school, and undergrad level. So you can see some pictures here of kids working with the baby buoy, and inside a baby buoy is this accelerometer that teaches them about the technology and how waves are formed, and just the basics. We also have education kits that we're working on and getting out across the regions that have, hands-on activities with maps and wave models and these little baby buoys. And they come with the low-cost scientific tool, which is a Pocket Lab, and an iPad, so that it's kind of plug and play. Just go for it. We also, try to get out and do outreach and informal education to community members. And so they're aware. So on the left, you can see one of our partners in American Samoa teaching other folks how to use the app. And then there's a buoy on the left on the table. And folks in American Samoa are super into it. They designed their own sticker that says, snare the bird, but watch the wave, which is a Samoan proverb. So we're really trying to get the word out to folks. So the next slide, another education product that we did for elementary school students is an activity book, and it was illustrated beautifully by an American Samoa artist, Pua Tofaiono, and she brought together all three regions, but with cool activities that are specific to place. So we're hoping that students really connect, but also tie us all together in how waves impact every community. So that is available on the website. Please go check it out. And for the next slide, we can't emphasize enough how important relationships are to co-design science and how much time it takes to build trust. And I think the initial grant for Backyard Buoys was 5 years, was an NSF Accelerator grant, but so much was achieved in the last couple years. It really did take time to start building it. And now it is growing beyond the Accelerator grant, and it has become part of the IUS fabric, and like more IUS regions are going to be joining. But the Pacific Islands were a founding, PAC IUS was a founding member of this, and it's going to continue with other funding. So even though the grant is done, we are going to carry on. And we have found that it takes, a lot of listening and sharing stories is really important. So these pictures really show, folks coming together from different areas to really share their experience. And some of like the stories that were told were just, they're so beautiful and emotional, and everyone had the same kind of thread of like maritime safety and caring for families and safety at sea, and making sure that everyone comes home safely, whether it be fishing or going in between islands for travel. So there was a sincere willingness to iterate and to make this the people's creation. So for our the second to last slide, some of the outcomes that we wanted to stress is the increased autonomy and ownership of the data and like the stewardship of the wave buoys themselves. People have really been amazing. They see the value, and they've taken on going out to like give the buoy a spa day and scrub the algae off. They've really, they've taken, like, people have gotten really excited about participating in the working groups and learning from other places and sharing across the Pacific Islands. Like it's really cool to see, people from all over the Pacific Islands sharing how they figured out the mooring for our specific, area, which is totally different, of course, from the Pacific Northwest. So we have seen a lot of increased community capacity in buoy operations, and we've started, and we hope to spread the youth learning with the buoys and related activities in classrooms and outreach and education events. And so for our last slide, we just want to make sure you please check out the website where you can get the app. And I'm sure she's going to share these presentations so you can go back and have Voyager. But the Backyard Buoys website really has some great resources. And some videos. We have some beautiful new videos I should highlight. They're right in the middle, but there's one from Majuro as well that really explains the project in the Pacific Islands very well. So I know we're going to do questions at the end, so I'll hand it back to Jennifer.
Sounds good. Thank you both so much for that. It's really encouraging to see sustainability built into projects like this. Even if buoys go on a walkabout, like you said, it's good to know that, there's buy-in from the communities that they're serving and the community at large, right? To keep these projects sustainable and around for a long time. So that's exciting. I will stop sharing this so that our next presenter can take over.
Okay, so you want me to go ahead and get started with mine?
Yeah,
All right,
that'd be
thank
great.
you.
And then
Great.
like I said, we'll do questions for everybody towards the end.
Thank you very much. Let me just go ahead and set this up. And are you seeing the presentation?
Looks good.
Okay, good. So thank you. Thanks a lot for having me. Really excited to be here. I live and dream buoys and ocean observation. So I love that last presentation. My name's Teddy. I started a group. I'm hesitant to call it a company because that sounds so official and bureaucratic, but a group we called Hennet. Okay, and along with myself, there's Thomas Alberts, who's also on the call today, and Jerry Delgado. The three of us are the core. Thomas is the drone engineer. He's the brains behind anything electronics. And I'd also like to quickly acknowledge the help that we received from Tarek, Millen, Rob, and Dave. Without them, we'd be pretty far behind. So they've definitely supported us significantly. So what is Hennet? Everyone's asked me, how do you pronounce it? What's it mean? Why are you calling it Hennet? Well, Hennet is actually the name for an ancient Egyptian goddess of the pelicans who provides travel to the underworld, right? So you might be asking, okay, why are you naming a drone company group after a Egyptian deity? Well, a couple reasons. One, a marine bird, pelican. Okay, there's a connection. Also, I really like the idea of the thought of the idea of the Hennet guiding lost souls through the underworld. You might say, well, what's the connection with lost souls and underworld and waves, right? Well, let's get to that. So we got a problem in measuring waves, and that's how do you measure the height of a breaking wave? Okay, you cannot put a buoy there, it'll get destroyed. You can't moor it there. If you're talking about really big waves, it could potentially get decimated. So how you can, I guess, statistically estimate it if you wanted to, but how do you objectively do it? Okay. So yeah, there's a sense of the underworld. How do we steer people through this murky world of kind of uncertainty? Thus the Hennet. Okay. How did I get started on this project? Well, first, I've always had an interest in remote sensing, and understanding that the sensor is the beauty for any satellite. And it's not just the satellite itself, it's the sensor involved. And one evening, I think it was during COVID, I was sitting in my office thinking, when I say thinking, I mean scrolling through a bunch of YouTube videos and surf magazine stuff. And I came across this article about differentiating the wave height between two famous surfers from Portugal that were surfed in Portugal. And the article argued about whose wave was bigger. One was like 73 feet, one was 71 feet. And I thought, how in the world can you distinguish 2 feet and 70-foot plus waves subjectively? That's just impossible. There's got to be a ton of error with that. And so I started thinking, how can we objectively, or can I start to objectively develop a method so we take all this uncertainty out of the problem? You'll see on the bottom left, there's a picture of a surfer named Mason Barnes. This is a wave that was surfed in February of 2022. That picture right there makes the wave look 80, 100 feet. If you look at the wave from a head on, it looks very different. People were saying, oh, it's a world record wave. It's a world record wave. Well, nobody knew. Fast forward to last year, picture on the bottom right, surfer from Santa Cruz, Eliso Slabir, I think his name is, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. People were saying, oh, that's a world record wave. That's over 100 feet. Again, no way to tell, just estimating. And the problem is waves can look very different based on the perception or perspective that you're looking at. Head on, to the side. You can look at two different pictures of the same wave and they could look 20 feet different. Okay. So how are people measuring waves right now, breaking waves? Well, it's pretty archaic. They're literally estimating subjective estimates from a photo interpretation. Okay, that was great in the 80s. Maybe it was even good in the early 90s, but we have the technology. Technology exists to make this objective, right? So how did you transition from the grandfather clock to the world record clock timing Usain Bolt, right? On the right, here are a couple pictures of waves that were being analyzed. Now, the yellow line is what they're considering the bottom of the wave. The red is the top. That's purely subjective. You can't really tell what the bottom of the wave is because if you look at it one angle, it looks different, right? So you have all this subjectivity. And how do they deal with all this subjectivity? Well, I should definitely first say I respect the work that people are doing in this. I'm not trying to bash their work. I think they're doing the best with what they have, right? And here are some great examples of some people. I think it's the same person from Brazil. He uses a bunch of geometry and math to estimate, you know, throws in some really high-tech equations there to build the confidence. But how do you really do this? You look at these reference levels. Is that reference level good? Is that really drawn to the top of some lighthouse? No one knows. It's just so objective, right? Subjective. Okay. And one other thing I wanted to just reference as well is like with all the subjectivity of where the top is, where the bottom is, how do you measure the wave and this and that? Well, then you have a whole other issue of error. If you're making subjective estimates, that error is massive. And you don't even have a way to quantify the error. I've heard some people say 20%. I've heard some people say 10%. No one really knows. If you're measuring a 40-foot wave, that's 4 feet of a 10% error, right? Anyway, about 2 years ago or so, a female surfer caught a big wave off the North Shore in Oahu, qualified as the female world record paddle-in wave. And her wave was considered the world record by 1.3 feet from the existing record. And I thought, okay, 1.3 feet is much smaller than the margin of error. How do you justify this? You know, statistically, it just bothers me. Scientifically, it bothers me. The technology, you know, it's just like, and we keep perpetuating this kind of opaque kind of method. Okay, so, do we have a solution? Well, came up with an idea for a drone-based approach. So going back to remote sensing, understanding different sensors and what they can do. Well, there's something called a radar telemetry. You can put that hold it over a body of water, and you can measure water levels. But obviously my hand isn't 300 meters long. I can't put it out into the sea. And you're not going to have a structure like a pier that's designed in places where there are 50, 60, 70-foot waves breaking. And so the idea to put it on a drone made the most sense. And the bottom right is just my elementary schematic of what's really going on and how we work. So we have a drone. It's got a few sensors on it. It runs through, and Thomas is going to laugh at me with my description of, I'm going to bastardize how it really works. But anyway, it does some filtering. There's some secret sauce that goes into there. You do have to process the data, which is all born on the drone. And essentially you hover the drone in one location and you let the waves pass underneath it. And the drone is basically sending a signal to the water surface. That water surface elevation changes as the wave passes. You have peaks and troughs and peaks and troughs. And it's measuring the distance from that water level to the drone. And the wave height is actually the difference of the distance between the peak and the trough. And so then you get into a bunch of different issues, like living in Hawaii, I'm sure you guys hear this a lot. Oh, how do you measure wave height? Oh, that's not the face of the wave, that's the back of the wave. You know, I've been out surfing Hawaii waves that put the tail between my leg, and people are calling it 4 to 6 feet. I don't think so, right? So we measure the distance from the crest to the trough, or the wave height and the actual wave face, okay? So what kind of technology are we using? Well, we're just thinking about applying 2 different concepts. Number one, think about a radar in a car. Most cars these days have some sort of beeping device, so you don't slam into a wall or run into a shopping cart or something. And as you approach it, the car, you'll hear a beep, 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 beep. Well, that's essentially a radar in the back of the car. It's working on the same principle. Instead of the car moving towards the wall, our car is just stationary and the wall is moving towards us. Okay, that's the analogy. Now you also have these things that you can put on surfaces, solid structural surfaces like bridges. You can just put them on a bridge and they can measure water levels. And that's exactly what we're doing, is measuring water level. Okay, so a little bit about the development. of our project. I first want to give a big shout out to Cotty, Andrew Cotton, big wave surfer. He has been instrumental in supporting us, giving us feedback. I can't say how much it's helped to have a professional big wave surfer kind of guide us through his opinions, perceptions, and through the industry. Now, I do want to step back and just remind everyone the sole focus for this project, it was born from the uncertainty of measuring huge breaking waves. We're talking 50, 60, 90 feet, okay? So right now that's our emphasis. So having Andrew Cotton work with this has been huge. We went to Nazare in 2022. You can see a picture there with Thomas. Thomas is, I'm going to say, the MacGyver of drones. We had a little bit of an issue. I'm not gonna lie, it was a big issue. We plugged a battery charger into the wall and it blew up. So we had to scramble on how to charge batteries and make new things. Or Thomas is able to do that late at night. Also, we went back to Nazare in 2023 in Portugal to measure some waves. Started up in Barbados. You'll see here, Tarek is with Thomas in the bottom left. And interestingly, a fun thing that we did on the bottom right, we went to a wave pool in Switzerland. And so what we did there is we tried to replicate a controlled environment for validation testing. So we flew our drones in gigantic waves in Portugal, measured 50 feet, 70-foot waves. So we definitely got some good data. So the question comes up, okay, how accurate is that, right? Well, in an effort to validate it, we went to the pool, put a pressure sensor on the bottom, flew the drone immediately over the pressure sensor, validated our measurements with a known sensor that was based on the bottom of the pool. So quickly, what do some of these results look like? Well, we're just measuring the distance from the drone to the water, and that water level is changing. So on the left, this is like your raw data. You can see it starts off from the surface, the drone takes off, goes to a location, can hover, measure, and then as you return home, that's where that drop off is on the far right. And that's time on the x-axis and the distance on the y-axis. On the right, here's what a kind of a smooth, not quite smooth, but smooth relative to the one on the left because it's a shorter time period. These are some of the results from our validation exercise at the wave pool in Switzerland. And the blue is the pressure sensor underwater, and the red is or orange is our drone. Now you'll see there's a little bit of discrepancy in terms of height, not necessarily timing. We did not get to do exactly what we wanted to because we couldn't put the drone too low because people were surfing and they were paying for that experience. So we didn't want to disrupt their surfing experience. And measuring the drone a little, or putting the drone a little high, gave us a little bit of interference with the walls of the wave pool. So it wasn't 100% successful, but we did get a lot of good data, and we noticed a lot of things about the drone, specifically some of the approaches that we were taking for stabilizing the drone. We took note of that, and then also revised that for an improvement later. Bottom is just a time series of, and the orange, it's your water level, with the red being the peaks, the blue being the troughs, and the blue line is just the difference between the peaks and trough, which is your wave height. Okay, x-axis is just time, y-axis is height. So you can derive the height from the differences of the water levels. Here's a couple other examples. Here's my preferred way to visualize the data at first. Top is a time series of the wave height, which is derived from the difference of some GPS correction and the actual measurements. And here you're plotting the actual height of the wave in the y-axis there. You can zoom in, like we did here, that white section of the top plot is just a zoomed in part of the time series. And the bottom, you can zoom in even more, and you can analyze and interrogate single waves. You can pick out specific individual waves from the time series and look at steepness. You can calculate wave period, you can calculate wavelength, all kinds of things. If you're looking for what the maximum wave height was during that one time period, you can isolate it. And right there, it's a very simple difference of minimum and maximum for trough and peak. So really, really fun stuff to do, especially if you like wave data. Here's an example of more wave data we collected from Nazare on a big day in February 2022. We actually measured 70-foot waves. Now, I want to be clear, our drone measures relative point data, right? What you're seeing here is point data that's kind of been interpolated along what I'm calling a pseudo x-axis. So I'm just extending the x-axis uniformly to give the impression of a three-dimensional depiction of the wave. So you're actually looking at the real wave height, and this is kind of what it would look like if the wave height was uniform across, which it's not, it's peaked. In order to get a real 3D peaked representation with drones, you'd need an array of drones and capture the wave height at the same time along a different distance. So there's some fun things you can do with that and different ways to visualize it, but it's just incredible. Like in the bottom right, I think that was a record wave that we measured in Nazare, 71 feet, I believe, and just the steepness. You can look at the differences between the front and the back of the wave, and just all kinds of you can go crazy with it. Another fun thing that I really like about the results that we can get from a time series of wave height is you can calculate the power spectrum, which is just a fancy way of saying you can calculate the peak period, the peak wave period while the drone was out there. So the red dot is where the peak energy is, and the frequency band on the x-axis, you can identify that about 19 seconds, which is what was expected that day as well. So if you wanted to go out, if you had a sea state, you wanted to say, hey, what's the wave spectrum look like out there? You can derive it just from analysis of a time series. So here are some other fun things that I like to do. I like to go out and take pictures of good days of surfing with maybe one person out or nobody out, and actually report what that breaking wave height was. Here's an example of some big waves that are the spot in front of my house in Barbados. The timestamp, the wave height. You can actually take a picture and tell with certainty this is how big that wave is, plus or minus 8 centimeters. Okay, so right. If this was a surf contest, for example, you wanted to know how big the waves were, no one was out there, no way to tell. You just fly the drone out there, come back, and you have your data. Some other ways that we can visualize the data. We did a little bit of a project with Cody and Red Bull over in Nazare, I think it was 2 winters ago, trying to measure specific waves that he was surfing. And so we have him on a wave, we have the wave behind it. We're able to hover the drone to catch the wave height and the wave behind it. You see the actual raw data. And that wave that Cody's on, I believe that's the 13.9 foot wave that data is kind of circling the ellipse there. So you can really, really fine tune. And then here was just on the bottom right, a time series of waves that passed under the drone when sunset. Nobody was out. There was no way to tell how big the waves were. There was no reference, and it was just amazing that some of those waves are 25 feet, and sitting up on the cliff, you would have never known. Another example of kind of guess how big this wave is, right? So you can have fun with this. You can take pictures of waves and measure it and have people guess. We've done that at contests before. We'll take some pictures and measure some waves of a heat early in the morning and get it printed and post it up and say, here's a prize for tomorrow. If the person closest guess to this wave height wins, right? And so makes it very objective and a lot of fun. In addition, you can even have fun looking at the wave height of waves with no surfers on them about to crunch this wave ski, trying to outrun it. And one thing that I'd like to do with this information is really start digging into validating wave models. We have buoys that can validate the wave forecast of a non-breaking wave, but a lot of us are interested in, hey, what's that breaking wave height? What's that going to do to my coastal structure? What's that going to do to wave run up? What's that for safety? So I'd like to look at some of the surf forecast products, because a surf forecast is essentially forecasting the height of the breaking wave. That's what surfers are interested in, right? And so we can take our drone out, look at the forecast, make observations, or compare them what the forecast was, and try and see if there are any biases in the forecast and stuff like that, right? Another thing that I would really like to do, in addition, is to look at the shoaling of a wave. So meaning, how much does the wave jack up when it hits a reef from offshore? So you could have two drones recording at the same time. Say, for example, pipeline. You could put a drone a little bit offshore pipeline and then put one by the reef. And then you can see how that 8-foot wave will hit the reef and magnify into a 12-foot wave. Or even more significantly in Tahiti, where you have very, very strong waves at various reef passes, you can have a 4-foot wave magnify to a 12-foot wave, right? And just as interestingly, is you can hover the drone in front of the wave on a reef pass, and as you have that strong shoaling, you can actually measure the amount of water that's being sucked up from the reef in front of it. So you can start to understand these dynamics and measure these things of waves that have never been measured before, and to get an estimate how much water is being drawn off that reef. On a low tide, that might make a big difference. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's just kind of what we're doing. It's a lot of fun. We're looking to get involved in providing wave height at big wave contests. It's a little bit of a challenge to get industry buy-in for various reasons that are totally out of my control, but we hope to be there and do some fun science while we're at it. So quick thank you, Jen. Got to thank you for inviting me. You get the first shout out. Red Bull obviously has been very helpful in supporting our work. Cotty, been amazing. Juzzy and the crew, Anthony Sedge, helping us get everything going with the video productions, and some friends that are making this possible. And of course, couldn't do it without my wife, who has a ton of patience with me wasting all my money on drone batteries and trips to go measure all this stuff. So with that, I want to leave it for some questions. That was just a short kind of informal discussion of kind of what we do, how we do it, and what we want to do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to all our presenters today. Like I said, it's a really interesting cross-section, I think, of applications, even just location, right? Like where this wave data can be collected, and the application for that data is remarkably wide. I did want to mention that we here in our Pacific Desk training, we do surf observations where we go out and we do that kind of subjective look at who's in the water and kind of estimate approximately just how high those breaking waves are. Obviously, that's a product that is of particular value here in Hawaii, but we want to give folks the opportunity to do that while they're here, and then be able to apply that when they return home. And like I said, we usually have some sort of reference in the water, right? We usually have somebody, surfing, bodyboarding, something, some sort of proxy in there. And that's not always the case. Even here on Oahu, it's definitely not the case once they return home. So it's exciting to see a way to bridge that kind of gap in terms of just not even with, big wave surfing, just in general, like knowing, what's happening at the reef or at the beach, and what that means for, like you mentioned, run up, inundation, that sort of thing.
Even scientifically, like just to know, like, okay, let's look at the storms and let's look at the breaking wave height that these storms generate. There's a lot of application just that goes beyond recreational competitive surfing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to open it up for questions from our audience. You're welcome to type questions into the chat box if you like. If you want to raise your hand, use the raise hand function. You're welcome to unmute and ask it via audio. but I want to give folks an opportunity to ask questions of any of our presenters, both the backyard buoys and Tenet.
If no one's going to jump in there, I do have a question.
Yeah.
So it's for Megan and Nicole. One of them was talking about this. I'm just curious, who drove the demand to develop the backyard buoys? Was this a demand that was coming from the communities? Because I remember at the beginning of the presentation, you had mentioned the difference between uh, wave energy suppression with different reefs and kelp and all that. So yeah, just how did that relationship start? I asked because in the Caribbean, there's effort to kind of develop a similar network.
I was going to see if Nicole unmuted because she is, I think she's been working 1 year longer than me. So I came in at the middle of the project. But my understanding is that it was, it was a core group of people. And from like AUS, for example, the folks, they were partnering with the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission. And so they actually wanted more information whether or not it was safe to be out whaling um, in very remote areas where there was like no data whatsoever. And so that was like definitely a community requesting more information. And so
Mm.
this was a solution. It's like, oh, well, we can't put a big buoy out there, but we could certainly help you. And so they were like, how can we use technology that exists to kind of answer these calls for information? In American Samoa, like the first partners were actually like the ports authority, like doing inter-island travel, like being interested in, we can't go out and look every single time, So it was just nice to have the wave information there to save time, energy, to keep people safe and like close down the small boat ferry that was going back and forth. And then also, and going out to an outer island where there's just not a lot of people in general. So they were just, it was a call from the people and a solution that came from AUS. The Nanus folks had a small boat harbor, or they have a boat harbor that it's blocked. So they really wanted to be able to get information where they couldn't see. And there was no buoy that was serving them appropriately. So backyard buoys was the solution. And it happened to be the Quileute people, the folks that hosted us for the all hands meeting. It was their boat harbor. And so it's like Dungeness crab fishing and fishing in general. So it was fishermen that were interested in getting an insight to what was going on beyond their vision so they could make the call on whether it was safe. So mostly, yeah, safety and coming from communities and the Pacific Islands, AUS, which is Alaska, and Nanus, which is the Pacific Northwest, have these indigenous communities that all had this similar need.
I love it. Thanks.
Nicole, did I get it right?
Yeah. One of our founding members he's involved in search and rescue in New Zealand also. And the buoy system too is sort of his like, hey, idea. We could do this. And then natural partnership between those of us on the Pacific.
Great question. Thank you. And I wanted to ask really quickly if either Nicole or Megan could put the Voyager link into the chat. I know obviously you could get to it from the PACIUS website, but we use Voyager in training here at the Pacific Desk, mostly for wave height. But I know that there's a lot of data available on or through Voyager. And so I'm super excited to see that the backyard buoy data is filtering into that too.
So I put the generic Voyager, but I can also include a link that has the backyard buoys selected so that it shows all the backyard buoys.
Okay.
Because if anybody on the call ever wants more information on Voyager, please reach out to us. We really want to help because we understand it's a powerful tool, but sometimes can be a little unwieldy and confusing at times. So we want to put that call out of just please let us know if you want any help. That's what we're here for.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the audience?
Is Thomas stretching or is that a question? Or is he muted? Can't tell. I'm gonna go with stretching.
There we go. Yeah.
Oh, there he. Oh, he wasn't stretching. Okay.
Yeah. There was we weren't allowed to unmute our mics, I think. I just wanted to thank Jennifer for hosting the webinar. And I want to say, I apologize to Teddy for correcting him about the radar altimeter. He called it a radar telemetry, I think, but
I was
telemetry is just when you
trying to
transmit
keep
data.
some of it, trying to keep some of it secret, Thomas. Come on.
I just couldn't help myself being a professor, so
I was
I'm
trying to
sorry
be
about that.
ambiguous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Megan added the Voyager link with the backyard buoy selected. That's really great. Thank you for that.
I have a
Maybe
ton of questions about how or why industry is against, like, they should be funding this so that it can then be used for safety and coastal like hazard protection, really, because the industry should be funding it. But I'm curious as to why they don't want to. Is there something great about the ambiguity of how big the wave is that people are riding? I feel like this is a great place for private industry to be funding something that can be super useful for everyone.
Yeah, so I'll talk just in the context of surfing and big wave contests and stuff like that. Um, so the league, the World Surf League, they own the rights to crown records, right? And say whose wave was the biggest, right? If you have people with drones that go out and just measure waves and know that guy got a record, that woman got a record, you lose a little bit of your power, right? So there's power in having the exclusive ability to crown this and that. I mean, for example, I got to be careful, but yeah, it's just we democratize the process, and sometimes that democracy can challenge the power structure in a commercial entity. And I understand that, but there's got to be a way that we can fuse technology so you can deliver to meet the demand. Unequivocally, the demand for all the surfers is high. They want this technology. You can't talk to any professional big wave surfer about this without them saying this would be great. So the demand is not being met at the top, and there are power structures in place. And then you got to factor in like, okay, well, this person's critical of the league and they get the record, and that, a lot of politics.
And very interesting. Is there
Yeah.
is there interest from planning groups or like government agencies, people that are truly interested in preserving infrastructure and, getting this data for that?
So not so much yet, because I haven't really pursued that so much because I want to always not oversell what the aerial buoy can do, right? Because I know at ports you can put a fixed radar, you can put a buoy, right? You don't need a drone to go out there, right? But if you really want to understand what that breaking wave height is at a certain location, then that would be key. So I don't know of any existing port people, coastal people that really want the height of the actual breaking wave as it enters their harbor or their channel or something. but I'd love to have that conversation with someone to do. I just think that our product may not be the best suited for that in terms of cost. I mean,
Very
I'd
interesting.
love to, but you gotta keep it honest, you gotta keep it real, right?
No.
Yeah.
Just curious, that it was a very, very interesting presentation. Thank you for
Oh,
sharing it.
thank you. Yeah, I've got a whole group of questions I'm gonna send you, so I don't want to hog the rest of the time, but I got a bunch of questions, yeah.
Any other questions from the audience, not necessarily from Teddy? Well, if not, we are at a few minutes past 1, and we aim to do about an hour, but we're not strict on that. But I do want to thank our presenters, of course, first and foremost. Thank you, all three of you, for um, joining us today on this particular topic, which again I know is of great interest across the region. And so yeah, we're looking forward to see how these things sort of develop over time, and how these projects and I won't say company, but how the how these projects develop, and the applications that I think a lot of different communities can start to develop. So anyways, thank you, three of you, for your time today and for agreeing to present to our Pacific Desk audience. And then, of course, I definitely want to thank our audience for joining us from varied locations, not even exclusively the Pacific, but thank you for joining us on our return to our webinar series. I want to wish everyone happy holidays, and we're really looking forward to seeing you next year. If you think of any questions after this webinar is concluded, you are certainly welcome to email me. I can certainly farm those questions out to our participants, or I can also share their contact information later on too. But yeah, if there's no other questions from the audience, then we'll go ahead and conclude today, and we will see you again in 2026.
Mele Kalikimoka or something like that.
Mele Kalikimaka.
Okay, there it is. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.